Hello everybody, and welcome to another DST recap video. Today we're going to play as Walter, who just got his skill tree in the current beta branch, so let's check out some of the new skills and unlock his and Wobie's new Shadow Affinity skills by making an early push for Fuelweaver and firing up the cave rifts. This recap is going to mostly cover the first 27 days of the run, because that's when most of the big action went down. And then I'll briefly discuss the remainder of the run, which I personally didn't find as exciting as the beginning, and I'll talk more about why when we get around to it. Now, the choices I made for the skill tree I discussed in detail on a previous video, but to recap, I am unlocking the Stinger rounds for Fuelweaver, the Shadow Slinger for Cave Rift bullets, Ammo Smith for better ammo production, and all 4 slingshot skills. For scouting skills, we are going to unlock Wobie snacks, flutter strips, and the portable drying rack. For Wobie skills, I'm taking the Endurance and the Furry Forager skills, and then all the mobility skills, including the Shadow Wobie Affinity. Okay, let's get started. First big goal is to rush the ruins for Thulecite rounds, the Ancient Key, and some gems. I'm also going to make a few flutter strips for healing. With the skill enabled, these guys heal for 36, but I consider them especially useful because they don't spoil, unlike the butterfly wings you use to make them. So for an early ruins rush, this is the perfect healing option for Walter, and honestly, it's an excellent choice for healing at any point in the game. At my first alchemy engine, I'm going to prototype a hambat, a football helm, lantern, gold rounds, marble rounds, and then turn the rest of my marble into beans and leave them planted upstairs. I do want a marble suit for the ruins, but I can stop at Nightmare Pig on the way in to grab some more marble. Before we head down, I want to grab a handful of monster meat so we can make Big Wobie and start working on Wobie snacks. Fortunately, there was a swamp close to the deciduous forest, so I'm stopping in here for the meat, and we also need reeds to make the slingshot mod. While in here, we also got super lucky and spotted some tentacle spots, so we can actually make the advanced slingshot band right away. It's not an incredible boost to the slingshot range, but eventually we can get it possessed, and then we'll be saving a bit of ammo. I'm also going to make the standard grip tape from silk. We can't mod these onto our slingshot until we prototype papyrus, so we'll be bringing both components to the ruins. Now we can feed Wobie a few pieces of monster meat and get our mount. The rest of the monster meat we will dry on her portable drying rack, and in a few days we'll be able to craft some non-spoiling snacks to keep her hunger topped off. And the jerky meat is actually ready already. That took like 8 minutes. Right, monster meat takes only 1 day to dry. That's awesome. Wobie snacks are also awesome. You get 2 from each bit of monster jerky, and they don't spoil, so they're the obvious choice for any player looking to keep Wobie in Chungus form. And there's Sir Pigus in the mud, so we'll make a pit stop here to grab a bit of extra marble. I can't free him though until we get our ruins pickaxe. Wobie is going to help us out in the lichen field with her foraging skill by digging extra lichen from each plant that Walter harvests. You have to be dismounted for this to work, and this works on both lichen and banana trees. Really wish it worked on glowberries. After killing a depths worm, I'm throwing down another alchemy engine in the ruins. Now we're gonna make a marble suit, our moggles, and 2 papyrus. And then we can craft our slingshot field kit and stick on our band plus wrap. Now we can start to clear the ruins. I will be getting most of my Thulecite from Ancient Guardian, but I do want to pick up a few purple gems while we're here so that I can also make slowdown rounds. The thing is, I don't have a ton of ammo yet, and I want to clear this station, so I'm just going to face tank the bishop and heal up afterwards. It's probably good to get my sanity down anyways because I need lots of nightmare fuel, and Walter isn't losing any passively. Once we grab a bit of nightmare fuel and Thulecite fragments, we're going to prototype cursed rounds, which are definitely some of the best ammo in the game. Now that Walter no longer needs to run to the ruins to craft this ammo, I am looking forward to using tons of it on this run. If we ever run out of Thulecite fragments, we can always craft up some Thulecite walls at the station and then break them for frags. I spent some time clearing for more ammo, but I forgot that these labyrinth chests are actually very good sources of both nightmare fuel and Thulecite frags, so we can pick up a bit of extra ammo on the way to Ancient Guardian. It's just challenging jumping on top of Wobie quickly enough if we get ambushed by spiders. I'm very thankful for the Umbral Dash, which can dash us across gaps in the labyrinth. As of this beta, Walter will only get bucked off of Wobie if he takes 8 or more damage within a 5-second window. So the objective is to reduce as much of that damage as possible. And for bosses like Ancient Guardian that hit for 100 damage, the difference between 90% and 95% damage reduction suddenly becomes very important. With a marble armor, Walter can withstand 1 attack but the tentacles are still going to shred him if we get caught on any, so it's still a glass cannon situation even though we are generally able to keep our distance. I appreciate that many of the new and reworked bosses have actual counters to a ranged build. Walter used to be able to easily cheese Ancient Guardian with the slingshot, and while it's still a safer fight for Walter, you still need to watch out for boss leaps and tentacles and earthquakes. It's definitely not a hold F kind of fight, at least not all the time. The loot was a bit crummy. I was hoping for a Star Staff and a decent bit of Thulecite, but oh well. Back in the ruins, we're going to upgrade the station and make our Thulecite frame for the slingshot. I will talk about this frame in a bit, but it is going to be very useful in upcoming boss fights. We also need to make a pickaxe for Sir Pigus. Courtesy pause for a Shadow Wobie OP moment. Teleport right into the hole. Let's go. Makes the lazy forager from Ancient Guardian even more of a slap in the face. Day 11, we're fighting Nightmare Werepig. It's actually a bit tricky getting Walter insane for the beginning because he's not affected by caves or any insanity auras. I could have just let the boss smack me once or twice to bottom out my sanity, but it actually looks like you don't need to be fully insane to target the Shadelings. Yeah, this might be a beta bug. So right here, I actually took a hit from the boss, which was not enough damage to knock me off of Wobie, but since this boss auto-knocks you off of any mount with their attack, it doesn't really matter. Any hit is going to send Walter flying. But at least when Walter needs to recover from something like this, he doesn't need to immediately worry about Wobie getting hurt. By contrast, this scenario would be pretty much a guaranteed death for a Beefalo. Even with this danger though, I do really like Walter in this fight because he is completely unaffected by the boss's insanity aura. Something that can really draw out this fight for other characters if you're not actively managing your sanity. You can also shoot him in phase 2 while he's stalking to get him to charge you and possibly get winded again, so we can move quickly through this phase. If I were hardcore speedrunning the Shadow Rifts, I'd just peace out once I got the 5 Dreadstone I needed from the pillars, but we've already done half the boss fight, so we might as well finish it off. That way we can also get pure horror, and once we make the plinth, we can make the good rounds. On the way back upstairs, we will stop by the grotto to bully some gnomes for 3 living logs, which I will need for a shadow manipulator. Gnomes are basically a free kill with the slingshot. Honestly, you could probably say that about the majority of enemies in the game. By day 15, we got the shadow pieces assembled and ready to go. Now we have 6 days to prep, and I want to get the Jelly Grip from Bee Queen in that time. So in preparation for that fight, I'm going to swing by Glommer Statue. I love that we can stop by anytime after full moon and grab a piece of Glommer Goop for the sticky grip. We don't even have to be on the surface during a full moon. Glommer leaves a piece behind for us. The sticky grip is going to have a higher attack rate than default. The grip tape probably fires faster after it warms up, but for Bee Queen, I don't anticipate standing still for a very long time, so I'm going to switch to the sticky grip for a more consistent firing rate. Also for Bee Queen, I really want to use slowdown rounds, which require Moonrock. I didn't find any in the meteor field, so I'm stopping by the Moonstone to mine out these guys for a few pieces. Look out, Walter! Otters will swipe Wobie snacks. Of course they do! Day 16, we got our Shadow Manipulator, and now we can make the slowdown rounds. These have been improved considerably in the beta, and as we start the fight with Bee Queen, I'm going to show you exactly how. They basically do what they say they do, and now the effect can be stacked up to 4 times. This synergizes well with Cursed rounds because the slower an enemy can move, the more likely they are to take hits from the Shadow Tentacles. The Thulecite frame adds a secondary attack to the slingshot that we can aim with the right mouse button. With rounds that apply a magic effect, this secondary attack will apply the effect in an area. So with slowdown rounds, we can effectively slow Bee Queen and all the Grumblebees at the same time by using this secondary attack. The fight will progress slowly and steadily. Walter's allergies mean that no matter the damage reduction, a single hit from a bee will add a flat 10 damage that can't be mitigated with armor, meaning he automatically gets thrown off Wobie. Now I know that the slowdown effect doesn't affect every enemy's fast attacks, like Spider Warrior lunges or Rabbit King's flying kick. It does fortunately work very well for Grumblebee charges. So in the final 2 phases they will charge, but not have much of a chance at catching up to us. I don't even need to slow down Bee Queen during these phases because she won't attack directly, so I can just keep slowing the Grumblebees and run back to Bee Queen for happy damage time. The whole fight took 1.5 days. It's long, but nothing compared to the slog that this fight used to be pre-Skilltree. Slowdown rounds make all the difference. And with a single piece of royal jelly, we can craft the jelly grip, which will give us an even better attack speed. I very much wanted to get this grip for Fuelweaver, and since we can't get the atrium until day 21 anyway, we might as well do this fight first. By the final day of autumn, we've gathered enough fossils, and on the first night of winter, it's time for shadow pieces. I wanted to try this fight with Shadow Wobie, but I soon learned that it is actually quite challenging to dodge every attack in this fight. I'm trying for the bishop last, so I'm killing the knight first. A few hits here and there from phase 1 and 2 aren't gonna be too bad, but once we hit phase 3, we need to make sure we can dodge every single attack. The dodging window for the bishop is also a whole lot smaller than I expected it to be. Fortunately, the rook moves faster than the bishop, so I can just keep luring him away and dealing damage before the bishop can catch up to me. For phase 3, I'm using the umbral dash to dodge the bishop. There's really not a lot of room for error in this dodge. It has to happen the moment the boss disappears. If I jump too early, it just reappears on top of me, and if I get hit once, my sanity shoots all the way down to 0. I tore through all of my armor in this fight, and was probably one mess up away from death. I think a ground fight with phase 3 rook would have been safer, especially with the road. For repeat fights of this, I'm not even sure I would use the slingshot unless I were cheesing from a boat. Anyway, that was the most stressful shadow piece fight ever! Let's go fight Fuelweaver. The atrium tentapillar is right next to some stairs in the green mush tree biome, so I'm going to use the slingshot to trigger some baby tentacles, which will conveniently distract the bishops while I keep shooting. It occurred to me during this, or maybe a viewer reminded me, that if I were in need of purple gems for a nightmare amulet, I could easily use the 2 guaranteed purples from these bishops. I'm trying to take more mental note of where I can find guaranteed resources on these runs so that I'm less beholden to RNG drops. The gems from Clostdeer and marble from Nightmare Werepig are some other examples. Once in the atrium, we're going to make liberal use of the umbral dash to scoot across the void and also past these obelisks. Shadow Walter is an absolutely incredible choice for a Fuelweaver rush because lazy explorers can basically be ignored, and he also has plenty of tools for dealing with the summons. For that purpose, we are going to make some stinger rounds and stick them in our secondary attack slot, which will allow us to aim freely when firing these off. It also means we can fire them from much farther away. Let's get started. For the entirety of this fight, I will try to keep the boss out of the inner circle because that is where the woven shadows will spawn. So we stick to the edge of the arena, using the umbral dash to escape the snare and kiting the boss as usual. I like to pick a regular time in this fight to remember to feed Wobie, and the start of the shield phase seems as good a time as any. Now for the unseen hands, I'm going to throw on the Nightmare Amulet and use the secondary attack to target them manually. You need to keep the Nightmare Amulet on until the bullet connects, otherwise it just passes through. But it's nice because you can shoot at them from anywhere in the arena if you want to just shoot them all from wherever you are. One of the biggest dangers in this fight is accidentally teleporting out of the arena, because the moment we leave, Fuelweaver will walk straight back to the middle and heal up. I am using the AoE from the stinger rounds to deal with the woven shadows, but I only want to use them if they get too close to the boss. If I can lead Fuelweaver away from them, that will extend the time until he summons them again, and will also conserve ammo. I'm generally trying to get this scenario right here. All the unseen hands destroyed, with the woven shadows trailing far behind. This way I can maximize my time dealing damage before the next shield goes up. Right here you see I'm going to save one hand until the next round of woven shadows so that I don't have to deal with them while the shield is down. Walter is not in a rush, he's not losing any sanity from kiting the boss around, and we have plenty of Wobie snacks to continue dodging the snare. Then once we get him sufficiently far away from the woven shadows, we can knock down the shield and start damaging him again. Rinse and repeat. On day 27, Fuelweaver goes down and the cave rifts go up. Absolutely incredible version of this fight. I love all the alternative methods for managing the summons and dodging the snare. It also feels like a decent length of time for an endgame fight. And the glass cannon of this character is still acutely felt. I love how even with all the character reworks and the new Rift additions, for me, this boss has remained the best designed fight in the game. Unfortunately, the excitement of the run kinda plateaued at this point. Once we opened the rifts and gained access to Ichor rounds, many of the remaining bosses in the game became absolutely crippled by Walter's slingshot. The Ichor rounds produce a very strong slowing effect that actually stacks with slowdown rounds. Shooting at Dragonfly with a combination of these two, plus pure Horror Bleed and Thulecite rounds, it honestly felt like target practice versus a sloth. Some bosses, such as Antlion, had little recourse versus Walter. at most very basic ranged attacks that were easy to avoid. And then there were bosses like Toadstool, Frostjaw, Bearger, and Moose, which didn't do much besides sit still and wait to be destroyed. Some of these bosses were unable to throw even a single hit against Walter, much less stand any chance of landing one. Some of them had fast-moving attacks that resisted the slowdown effect. For example, Celestial Champion Phase 1 and 2 still moved at full speed when charging, same with Eye of Terror and the Twins. But on top of the slowing rounds, Walter had Wobie, who was fully capable of providing enough speed and mobility skills to dash in circles around any boss in the game. Aside from Shadow Pieces, the one fight that I really struggled with was Crab King. You can actually take a lot of damage in this fight from the towers and the crab guards, and going insane can be a big problem. So next time I'd probably go melee for the boss, just using the slingshot to take out the towers. But all in all, most of the bosses did not stand a chance against Walter once the cave rifts were open. The comment I got on almost every boss fight was, "This feels like cheese," and it was hard to disagree. When you're hurting an enemy that has practically no options for retaliation, I mean, that is the scenario I think of when I think of cheese. And what's worse is that I felt obligated to fight this way because of how fundamental the slingshot is to Walter's character. But the thing is, these were some very important changes that needed to happen to the slingshot to really make it a viable weapon. Walter's skill tree is arguably the best of the 3 skill trees added in this beta, especially if you're considering factors like how well do skills complement each other, how good are the individual skills, and how many filler skills are there? Walter's skill tree makes the slingshot a very, very good weapon to main. The issue is that it's shedding light on the reality that many of the game's boss fights offer no counter to a pure ranged build. Now, I certainly don't feel threatened by this ease of boss fighting, but it does sort of turn me off to the idea of a long-term Walter world. It's a matter of personal enjoyment. I like boots on the ground, fighting and dodging around enemies with that ever-present danger of a giant boss looming over my head. I don't like trivializing bosses, it's just not my style. Will nerfing Walter's slowdown kit solve this problem? No, it definitely won't. We will still have Wolfgang with marble suits, we'll still have Wirt with merms, and we will still have Maxwell's Shadow Prison. And I think it's okay that these methods exist for players who aren't as interested in fighting strategies, or for megabasers who want easier methods for repeating these fights. But I also think that future bosses can be designed with range counters in mind. And now that Walter's slingshot is trivializing so many of the big fights in the game, including late game bosses, it's probably a good time to be having this discussion. We need more bosses like Fuelweaver in the Constant, for Walter's sake and for all of us. All that said, I do confess that I really enjoyed the general Walter experience. And I think the skill tree did some amazing things with the rest of his survival kit. I love relying on Wobie for mobility. The courier skill is amazing. The drying rack and the Wobie snacks and the shadow dash, they're all fantastic additions to the character. Walter's kit feels very cohesive and all the skills work more in tandem with each other. And for all my bemoaning of the vulnerability of bosses, I think the slingshot skills add the right things. Cheap ammo, variety of ammo, and plenty of customization options. With advanced bans probably being the weakest skill just because bans in general are just not all that impactful. But I had a blast adding customizations and swapping different grips out for different fights. It almost felt like playing an RPG. My issues with Walter's slingshot are more so issues I take with the general nature of DST mobs. And I hope that Clay stays open to the idea of reworking older boss fights to be more compatible with the current reality of fighting in the game. Anyways, those are my final thoughts on the skill tree. I hope that you enjoyed the video and the beta, and I'll see you whenever we finally get this update. See you next time.